The fluorescent lights in the ICU at Harborview Medical Center buzzed faintly, a constant hum that seemed to mock the silence of my son's stillness. I sat hunched in a stiff chair beside Liam's bed, my hands wrapped around his small, bruised fingers, careful not to disturb the IV line taped to his wrist. 72 hours. That's how long I'd been here, in this sterile room in Seattle, Washington, watching the rise and fall of his chest, orchestrated by a ventilator. My eyes burned, not just from exhaustion but from the tears I'd shed until there were none left. Liam, my 12-year-old boy, lay motionless, his face swollen and unrecognizable beneath bandages. A bike accident, a car swerving onto the Burke-Gilman Trail, a split second that had shattered our world. I traced the edge of his hand, memorizing the freckles I'd always teased him about. "You've got a constellation on your knuckles, kiddo," I'd say, and he'd roll his eyes, his grin lighting up our tiny Seattle apartment. Now, those freckles were my anchor, a reminder that this broken body was still my Liam, the boy who loved coding apps and dreamed of building robots. The doctors had warned me the first 24 hours were critical. Then the next 48. Now, on day 3, they spoke in cautious tones about brain swelling and uncertain outcomes. I clung to their every word, searching for hope in phrases like, "He's young" and "his vitals are stable." But hope felt fragile, like a thread stretched too thin. The room was a cocoon of beeping monitors and hushed voices. Nurses moved with quiet efficiency, their kindness a lifeline in this storm. One of them, Sarah, had brought me a blanket last night, draping it over my shoulders as I shivered in the air-conditioned chill. "You need to rest, Emily," she'd said softly. Rest. The word felt like a foreign language. How could I rest when my son was fighting for his life? Every beep of the heart monitor, every whoosh of the ventilator, was a reminder that Liam was still here. I couldn't leave him. Not for a moment. What if he woke up, confused and scared, and I wasn't there? What if he slipped away, and I missed his final breath? I pulled out the small notebook I'd tucked into my purse, a habit I'd started in these endless hours. Journaling was my way of holding on, of pouring out the fear and love that threatened to drown me. I wrote to Liam, words I hoped he'd read someday. "You're so strong, my sweet boy," I scribbled, my pen shaking. "I'm right here, every second. We're going to get through this together." Writing grounded me, a tether to the future I refused to let go of. I imagined Liam, years from now, reading these pages, laughing at how sappy his mom had been. The thought brought a fleeting smile, quickly swallowed by the weight of reality. My phone buzzed on the bedside table, jarring me from my thoughts. The screen lit up with a name that twisted my stomach. Margaret Reynolds. My mother. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the decline button. For 3 days, she hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't shown up. I told myself she was busy, that she'd come when she could. But deep down, I knew better. Margaret's world revolved around appearances, and a hospital room didn't fit her carefully curated life. Still, a part of Mia, small, desperate Parthupt, she was calling to offer comfort, to ask about Liam, to be the mother I needed right now. I answered, my voice hoarse. "Mom? Emily." Her tone was crisp, the same one she used to delegate tasks at her charity galas. "I'm finalizing plans for Olivia's birthday dinner tomorrow in Portland. I need you to drive down by noon to help set up. The caterers are being difficult. And you know how particular your sister is." The words hit me like a physical blow. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. Liam's monitors beeped steadily behind me, a stark contrast to the absurdity of her request. "Mom," I said slowly, "I'm at the hospital. Liam's in the ICU. He hasn't woken up since the accident." "I understand he's injured, Emily," she replied, a hint of impatience creeping in. "But the doctors are handling it. There's nothing you can do by sitting there. Olivia's been planning this for months. It's her 30th birthday, a milestone. Family comes first." "Family comes first," the phrase echoed, hollow and cruel. My son was fighting for his life, and she was talking about table settings. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. "Liam might not make it," I said, my voice breaking. "He has a traumatic brain injury, Mom. Broken bones. Internal bleeding. I can't leave him." Don't be dramatic, she snapped. He's getting the best care. Hovering won't change that. You have responsibilities to your sister, to this family. If you can't manage a few hours, Emily, there will be consequences. Your father and I have supported you and Liam for Yershi's school fund, the emergency savings. That can all be reconsidered. The threat landed like ice water, chilling me to the core. For a moment I was a child again, standing in our Seattle mansion, shrinking under Margaret's disapproval. All my life, her love had come with strings, her support a transaction. But this wasn't about me anymore. This was about Liam. My heart, my world. I looked at his still form, the boy who'd inherited his father's courage and my stubborn hope. He needed me here, not in Portland arranging flowers for a party. No, I said, the words steady despite the tremor in my hands. I'm not leaving Liam. Not for Olivia's birthday, not for you, not for anything. Emily Harper, she said, her voice steel. If you choose to defy me, don't expect our help anymore. You're making a mistake. Then it's my mistake to make, I replied. Goodbye, Mom. I ended the call, my heart pounding. For a moment, I sat frozen, the weight of what I'd done settling over me. Then, with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, I opened my contacts, found Margaret's number, and deleted it. The act was both terrifying and freeing, like cutting a rope that had been strangling me for decades. Sarah, the nurse, appeared at the door, her eyes kind but concerned. Everything okay, Hon? I shook my head, then nodded, a contradiction of emotions. Not really, I admitted, but I think it will be. She didn't press, just adjusted Liam's blanket with a gentleness that made my throat tighten. You're doing right by him, she said. He knows you're here. I squeezed Liam's hand, leaning close to whisper, I'm not going anywhere, buddy. You hear me? We've got big plans, your coding projects, that trip to the Space Needle you keep bugging me about. You just keep fighting. My voice cracked, but I kept talking, weaving stories of our future, willing him to hold on. In my notebook, I wrote again, the words spilling out. Today, I chose you, Liam. Over guilt, over fear, over a family that doesn't understand us. You're my home, and I'll fight for you always. I closed the journal, tucking it beside me. The ICU hummed on, a world of uncertainty and hope. But in that moment, I felt a spark of strength, a mother's heart refusing to break. Whatever came next, doctor's updates, Margaret's consequences, Liam's uncertain recovery, I'd face it with Liam at my side. Because love, real love, doesn't demand perfection or compliance. It shows up, stays, and fights, no matter the cost. The hospital room faded as I sat beside Liam's bed, the steady beep of his heart monitor pulling me back to a different kind of rhythm, the relentless cadence of my childhood in Seattle, Washington. My hands, still clutching Liam's, trembled with the weight of memory. In the sterile quiet of Harborview Medical Center, I could almost hear my mother's voice, sharp and exacting, echoing through the pristine halls of our suburban home in Bellevue. Margaret Reynolds had ruled our family like a conductor, demanding perfection in every note. And I, Emily Harper, had always been a half step out of tune. Growing up, our house was a showcase, all gleaming hardwood and curated art, a reflection of Margaret's need for control. Every surface sparkled, every moment scripted. I was 8 when I first understood that love in our family came with conditions. I'd run home from school, clutching a drawing of Mount Rainier, my pencil strokes capturing the peak's jagged beauty. Look, Mom, I'd said, breathless with pride. Margaret barely glanced at it. It's messy, Emily. Why can't you be neater, like Olivia? My younger sister, Olivia, 4 years my junior, was the golden child, her every action a melody Margaret adored. Even then, Olivia's tiny fingers danced across the violin, her report cards glowed with A's, and her smile charmed everyone. I wasn't a bad kid. I ran track, earned B+s, stayed out of trouble. But in Margaret's eyes, I was a smudge on her perfect canvas. The comparison was constant, a refrain that shaped my childhood. If Olivia won a music competition, my second-place finish in a track meet was a disappointment. If she recited poetry at a family dinner, My quiet stories about the stray cats I fed behind our garage were ignored. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Margaret would say, her voice a blade disguised as concern. I internalized those words, carrying them like stones in my pockets. I tried harder, stayed up late studying, practiced my sprints until my legs burned. But no matter how fast I ran, I couldn't outrun Olivia's shadow. My father, Robert, was a gentle presence, a quiet accountant who worked long hours in downtown Seattle. When he was home, he'd try to soften Margaret's edges. "Your mom just wants you to shine, Emily," he'd say, his tired smile a bandage on a wound he couldn't heal. But Margaret's will was iron, and Robert was no match for it. I loved him for trying, for the times he'd slip me a book about art or sneak me an extra cookie when Margaret wasn't looking. Yet his support was always whispers, never loud enough to challenge the symphony of her expectations. By middle school, I began to carve out my own space, small acts of rebellion against Margaret's mold. I discovered sketching, losing myself in the lines of Seattle's waterfront, the ferries gliding across Puget Sound, the chaos of Pike Place Market. My sketchbook became a sanctuary, a place where I could capture beauty without judgment. I started volunteering at a food bank in Capitol Hill, sorting donations and serving meals to people who thanked me with genuine warmth. There, I wasn't Olivia's sister or Margaret's failure. I was Emily, the girl who showed up, who cared. Those moments fed a part of me that was starving, a hunger for acceptance that didn't demand perfection. One afternoon at 16, I displayed my sketches at a community art show in the Seattle Public Library. I'd worked for weeks, framing drawings of the city's skyline, the Space Needle piercing the clouds. Margaret didn't come. Olivia had a recital that day, and family priorities were clear. But as I stood among strangers admiring my work, a librarian named Miss Carter approached. "You have a gift, Emily," she said, her eyes kind. "This is your voice." That validation, so simple yet so rare, planted a seed. Maybe I didn't need to be Olivia. Maybe I could be enough as myself. High school brought new pressures. Margaret pushed me toward activities she deemed prestigious debate club, advanced placement courses while dismissing my love for art. "Sketching won't get you into a good college," she'd say, her lips pursed. I complied, joining the clubs, studying until my eyes ached, but I kept my sketchbook close, hiding it under my bed like a secret. I dreamed of studying art at the University of Washington, but Margaret had other plans. "Olivia's already on track for Juilliard," she'd remind me. "You need a practical degree, Emily. Don't waste your potential." The weight of her expectations was suffocating, but it also forged a quiet strength. I learned to navigate her world while protecting my own. At the food bank, I started a small art project, teaching kids to draw as a way to express their struggles. Their laughter, their messy lines, reminded me of the joy in imperfection. I began to see myself not as a lesser version of Olivia, but as someone with a different story, one worth telling. Yet, even as I grew, the sting of Margaret's disapproval lingered. Every family gathering was a stage for Olivia's brilliance, with me cast as the understudy who never got to perform. Looking back, I see how those years shaped me, for better and worse. The constant comparison taught me resilience, but it also left scars, doubts that whispered I'd never measure up. Sitting in the ICU now, holding Liam's hand, I felt those scars ache. Margaret's call 3 days ago, demanding I leave Liam for Olivia's birthday party in Portland, was a replay of that old script. Her voice, unchanged after all these years, still expected me to fall in line. But something had shifted. Liam's accident, his fragile fight for life, had stripped away the last threads of my compliance. I wasn't that girl anymore, scrambling for crumbs of approval. I was a mother, and my son needed me whole. In the hospital's dim light, I opened my journal, the one I'd started writing in for Liam. My pen moved, words spilling out like a prayer. "I wish I could tell my younger self that she was enough," I wrote. That her sketches, her heart, her quiet strength mattered. "Liam, you've always seen me, even when I couldn't see myself. I'm fighting for you now, the way I should have fought for me back then." The words felt like a release, a way to heal the girl I'd been while anchoring the woman I'd become. A nurse, Sarah, passed by, checking Liam's monitors. "You okay, Emily?" she asked, her voice a gentle interruption. I nodded, wiping my eyes. "Just remembering," I said. "Trying to make sense of it all." She smiled, adjusting Liam's blanket. You're here for him. That's what matters. I looked at Liam, his face still swollen but unmistakably my boy. In his coding projects, his lopsided grin, I saw the same spark I'd fought to keep alive in myself. Margaret's shadow had loomed large, but it hadn't extinguished me, and it wouldn't touch Liam. I leaned close, whispering, We're going to be okay, buddy. You and me, we're writing our own story. The monitors beeped on, a steady reminder of his fight. In that moment, I vowed to protect not just Liam's life but his spirit, the part of him that deserved to shine, free from anyone's shadow. The faint hum of Liam's ventilator pulled me back to the present. But my heart lingered elsewhere, in a time when love had felt like a sunrise after a long, cold night. Sitting beside my son's bed in Seattle's Harborview Medical Center, I traced the contours of his hand, the ICU's sterile glow casting shadows that danced with memories. Liam's accident had cracked open my past, and as I watched his chest rise and fall, I thought of Nathan, his father, my husband, the man who'd taught me what it meant to be seen. In the haze of these endless hospital hours, I could still hear his laugh, feel the warmth of his hand in mine, and ache for the life we'd lost too soon. I met Nathan during my sophomore year at the University of Washington, a crisp autumn day when Seattle's campus was ablaze with golden leaves. I was 19, sketching by Lake Washington, my pencil capturing the ripples of water against the shore. He was an engineering student, all quiet confidence and worn sneakers, studying on an ROTC scholarship. That's incredible, he said, peering over my shoulder at my drawing. I flinched, used to hiding my art from my mother, Margaret's judgment. But Nathan's eyes held no criticism, only curiosity. You've got a way of making the world feel alive, he said. Those words, so simple, were a lifeline. For the first time, someone saw Minot as Olivia's lesser shadow, not as Margaret's disappointment, but as Emily, whole and enough. We became inseparable, sharing late-night coffee at Fremont's quirky cafes, talking about everything from my sketches to his dreams of serving in the army. Nathan loved my art, pinning my drawings to his dorm wall, laughing at my sarcastic jokes, never once comparing me to anyone else. He saw the girl who'd grown up in Bellevue's suffocating perfection, who'd found solace in food banks and sketchbooks, and he loved her fiercely. With him, I shed the weight of Margaret's expectations. I started dreaming bigger, imagining a life where I could study art, maybe teach it someday, without apologizing for who I was. When I told my parents about Nathan at 21, Margaret's reaction was as cold as a Seattle winter. An army boy? She scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. You're throwing away your future, Emily. What about graduate school? A real career? She couldn't see what I saw in Nathaniel's integrity, his kindness, the way he made me feel like I belonged. My father, Robert, offered a hesitant smile. If he makes you happy, kiddo, he said. But his words were drowned out by Margaret's insistence that I was making a mistake. Olivia, already a star at Juilliard, was the daughter who mattered. My choices were just noise. Nathan's family in Tacoma welcomed me with open arms, their small ranch house filled with laughter and chaos. Sunday dinners were loud, with his mom's homemade lasagna and his dad's terrible puns, a stark contrast to the stiff formality of my family's Bellevue gatherings. When Nathan proposed under the Space Needle, his eyes nervous but sure, I said yes without hesitation. We married at 22 in a simple Tacoma chapel, despite Margaret's disapproval. She attended with a tight smile, criticizing the modest venue and my thrift store dress. Robert slipped me a check, whispering, "I'm proud of you," when Margaret wasn't looking. It was enough to carry me through. Our early years were a blend of struggle and joy. We rented a tiny apartment in Tacoma, Nathan balancing his engineering degree with ROTC training, me working part-time at a library while taking art classes. Liam arrived a year later. A perfect boy, with Nathan's dark curls and my hazel eyes. Holding him, I felt a love so fierce it scared me. Even Margaret softened around Liam, though her visits came with unsolicited advice. "You're holding him too much, Emily," she'd say. "He'll be spoiled." But Nathan would just wink at me, scooping Liam up, saying, "This kid's gonna rule the world." Those moments-or little family of three, building a life on love instead of perfection, were my truest home. Then came the day that broke us. Nathan deployed to Iraq when Liam was 4, his second tour. I'd learned to cope with the long months apart, counting days until his return. But one evening, 2 officers stood at our door, their faces solemn, a folded flag in their hands. Nathan wouldn't be coming home. A roadside bomb had taken him, leaving me a widow at 29, Liam a fatherless boy at 5. The grief was a tidal wave, swallowing me whole. Liam, too young to understand, kept asking why Daddy wasn't on video calls anymore. I held him through his tears, my own heart shattered, trying to be both mother and father in a world that felt empty without Nathan. I moved us to a small Seattle apartment, closer to Liam's school and my new job as a library assistant. The life insurance and military benefits kept us afloat, but emotionally, we were drowning. I packed away Nathan's clothes, his engineering books, but kept his dog tags on my nightstand, a reminder of the man who'd believed in me. Margaret's response to our loss was to tighten her grip. "You should move back to Bellevue," she insisted. "You can't raise Liam alone." When I refused, wanting stability for Liam, she found other ways to control. She'd buy him toys I couldn't afford, then remind him, "Mommy can't get you these, but Grandma can." Each visit was a reminder of my supposed inadequacy, a mirror of the childhood I'd fought to escape. In the hospital now, I opened my journal, the one I'd started for Liam. My pen moved, words spilling out like a confession. "Nathan saw me, Liam," I wrote. "He loved the parts of me I was taught to hide. I wish you could remember him, his laugh, the way he'd dance with you in the kitchen. I'm trying to love you the way he loved us, without conditions, without fear." Writing was my bridge to Nathan, a way to keep his spirit alive for Liam, for me. I'd joined a virtual support group for military widows, a lifeline in those early years. Women from across the U.S., Maine, Texas, California shared stories of loss and resilience, their voices a chorus of strength. One night, a widow named Carla said, "Grief doesn't shrink, but you grow around it." Those words became my mantra as I rebuilt our life. I enrolled Liam in coding classes, his passion a spark that lit up our darker days. I took up sketching again, small drawings of Liam asleep or Seattle's skyline, reclaiming the art Margaret had dismissed. Slowly, we found a new rhythm, a fragile normal built on love and memory. But Liam's accident had reopened the wound of Nathan's loss. Sitting in the ICU, I felt the same helplessness, the same fear of losing the person I loved most. Yet Nathan's belief in me, his unwavering faith, was a light I clung to. I leaned close to Liam, whispering, "Your dad's watching over you, buddy. He'd be so proud of how strong you are." The monitors beeped, a steady pulse of hope. Nathan was gone, but his love lived in Liam, in me, in the fight we'd waged together. Whatever came next Margaret's demands, Liam's uncertain recovery, I'd carry Nathan's strength, a beacon to guide us through the dark. The ICU at Harborview Medical Center was a world of its own, a place where time blurred into the rhythm of Liam's heart monitor and the soft hiss of his ventilator. I sat beside my son, my hand wrapped around his, the weight of 72 hours without sleep pressing against my chest. Seattle's gray light filtered through the window, casting a pale glow on Liam's bruised face. In the quiet, my mind drifted, not to the hope of his recovery, but to the years after Nathan's death, when my mother, Margaret Reynolds, tightened her grip on our lives. Her support, like everything she offered, came with strings, each one pulling me back to the Bellevue childhood I'd fought to escape. After Nathan was killed in Iraq, I was 29, a widow with a 5-year-old son who didn't understand why his father's face no longer appeared on our video calls. Grief was a thief, stealing sleep, appetite, and the ability to imagine a future. But Liam needed me, so I pieced myself together, moving us to a modest apartment in Seattle's Capitol Hill, closer to his school, and my new job as a library assistant. The military benefits and Nathan's life insurance kept us afloat, but emotionally, we were barely treading water. I'd lie awake at night, Nathan's dog tags cold against my fingers, wondering how to be enough for Liam when I felt so broken. Margaret saw my vulnerability as an opportunity. "You can't do this alone, Emily," she'd say, her voice a mix of pity and command. "Move back to Bellevue. Let us help." It sounded like care, but I knew better. Her help was never free. Growing up, I'd learned that Margaret's love was a transaction, her approval tied to compliance. I'd spent my childhood chasing her standards, only to be outshone by my sister Olivia, the violin prodigy whose every achievement was a family treasure. Now, As a single mother, I refused to let Margaret reshape Liam's life to fit her vision. I wanted him to grow up free, loved for who he was, not who she demanded him to be. But independence came at a cost. When Liam started kindergarten, I struggled to balance work, parenting, and the grief that lingered like a shadow. Margaret stepped in, offering to pay for Liam's extracurricular coding classes, soccer camp, even a new laptop for his budding app designs. I accepted, grateful but wary. Each check arrived with a lecture. "You're letting him spend too much time on that computer, Emily," she'd say, her lips pursed. "He needs structure, like Olivia had." Or, "This apartment is so cluttered. How can you raise a child in this chaos?" Her words echoed the childhood refrain. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Only now, it was my parenting, my life, under her microscope. Margaret's gifts to Liam were another weapon. She'd arrive at our apartment with extravagant Presenza high-end drone, a smartwatch things I couldn't afford on my library salary. Liam's eyes would light up, and I'd force a smile, hiding the sting of her unspoken message. "You can't provide for him, but I can." She'd take him to her Bellevue mansion for weekends, filling his head with stories of Olivia's perfect life in Denver, Colorado, where she lived with her lawyer husband and their twin boys in a house straight out of a magazine. "Aunt Olivia's boys are already in gifted programs," Margaret would say. Her tone pointed. "Is Liam keeping up in school?" The comparison was relentless. A reminder that our life, our small, love-filled world, was lesser in her eyes. I tried to shield Liam from her tactics, but he was a perceptive kid. At 7, he came home from a visit with Margaret, his face serious. "Grandma says we don't have a big house because you didn't marry someone rich," he said, clutching a new robot kit she'd bought. My heart sank. I knelt beside him, brushing back his curls. "We have everything we need, buddy," I said. "A home full of love. Your coding projects. Our movie nights. That's what makes us rich." He nodded, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and I hated Margaret for it. She wasn't just undermining me. She was teaching Liam to measure his worth by her standards. Desperate to mend our fractured family, I attended a reconciliation workshop in Seattle's community center, hoping to find a way to coexist with Margaret. The facilitator spoke of boundaries and mutual respect, concepts foreign to my mother's world. I shared my story, my voice shaking as I described her control, her comparisons, her conditional love. Other participants nodded, their own tales of toxic dynamics mirroring mine. "You can't change her," one woman said gently, "but you can change how you respond." The workshop gave me clarity, but it also confirmed what I'd long suspected. Margaret's help was a leash, and I'd been letting her pull it. Still, I maintained contact for Liam's sake. He loved his grandparents, especially Robert, who'd call to check on his coding projects or slip him a sci-fi book during visits. Robert was my quiet ally, his support limited by Margaret's dominance. I wanted Liam to have family, to know his cousins in Denver, to feel connected despite the tension. So, I endured Margaret's visits, her critiques of my unambitious career, her suggestions that Liam's pediatrician wasn't top tier. Each interaction left me drained, but I told myself it was worth it for Liam's smile when he played with his cousins or built robots with Robert. In the ICU, those compromises felt like betrayals. Margaret's call 3 days ago, demanding I leave Liam's bedside for Olivia's birthday party in Portland, had shattered any illusion of her care. She hadn't asked about Liam, hadn't offered to come, hadn't acknowledged the terror of his brain injury. Her support, her money, her presence, all of it, came with strings, and I was done tying myself to them. I opened my journal, the one I'd started for Liam, my pen a lifeline in the hospital's chaos. "I let her control me for too long," I wrote. "Not because I needed her money, but because I needed her love. But you, Liam, you've shown me what love really is. I won't let her strings touch you." A nurse, Sarah, paused by Liam's bed, checking his monitors. "You're looking thoughtful," she said, her smile kind. "Just realizing some things," I replied, my voice raw. "About family. About what matters." She nodded, adjusting Liam's blanket. "Family's the people who show up, Emily, like you're doing for him." I looked at Liam, his face still swollen, but holding the promise of his father's courage, my stubborn hope. Margaret's strings had bound me for years, pulling me toward a life I didn't want. But here, in this ICU, I saw the truth. Love doesn't demand compliance. It shows up, raw and unwavering, like Nathan's belief in me, like my vigil for Liam. I leaned close, whispering, "We're breaking free, buddy. You and me, we're enough." The monitors beeped, a steady pulse of possibility. Whatever Margaret withheld her money, her approval I'd find a way. For Liam, for us, for the life we deserved. The ICU at Harborview Medical Center was a fortress of machines and murmurs, but my world had narrowed to the small, bruised hand I held. Liam, my 12-year-old son, lay still, his ventilator's rhythm a fragile thread tying him to life. Seattle's gray morning seeped through the window, casting a muted glow on his bandaged face. 4 days ago, he'd been a blur of energy, his laughter echoing in our Capitol Hill apartment. Now, the silence was deafening, broken only by the beep of monitors and my whispered promises. As I sat there, exhausted after 80 hours without real sleep, my mind replayed the day that had shattered our Livsa sunny Saturday that turned dark in an instant. It was one of those rare Seattle mornings when the sky was a perfect blue, the kind that made you believe spring had finally won. Liam bounded into our kitchen, his sneakers untied, his eyes bright with excitement. "Mom, can I go biking with Ethan and Sam on the Burke-Gilman Trail?" he asked, already halfway through a bowl of cereal. "Ethan's dad is driving us. They'll pick me up in 20 minutes. I looked up from my coffee, my grocery list forgotten. Liam's passion for coding had taken a back seat that week to his love of biking, a new obsession that lit him up. "Helmet and phone?" I asked. "Our standard safety check." "Yes and yes," he said, rolling his eyes with that preteen swagger. "I'm not a baby anymore, Mom." I laughed, ruffling his curls as he ducked away. "Humor your overprotective mom, okay? Be back by 4. We've got to grab supplies for your coding project." He grinned, promising to be home for our planned evening of pizza and debugging his latest APA game he'd been tweaking for weeks. I watched from our apartment window as he pedaled off with his friends, waving back at me with a lopsided smile. It was the last moment of our old life, a snapshot I'd hold on to when everything changed. The call came at 11:42 a.m. An unfamiliar number. A woman's voice, calm but urgent. "Is this Emily Harper? Liam's mother?" My heart stopped, the world tilting as she explained. A car had swerved onto the Burke-Gilman Trail. Liam was hit. He was being rushed to Harborview in critical condition. I don't remember hanging up, or grabbing my keys, or driving through Seattle's traffic. My next clear memory is bursting through the hospital's emergency doors, gasping Liam's name to the receptionist. "He's in surgery," she said gently, guiding me to a waiting area that smelled of antiseptic and fear. The surgical liaison, Dr. Nguyen, met me in a quiet room, her eyes kind but direct. "Liam has severe head trauma," she said, her words slow, as if giving me time to absorb them. "He's got a fractured pelvis, broken ribs, and internal bleeding. The neurosurgeon is working to relieve pressure on his brain. The orthopedic team will address his other injuries once he's stable." I nodded, numb, her words floating somewhere beyond reach. "Is he going to die?" I asked, my voice a stranger's. "He's very seriously injured," she said, no false promises in her tone. "The next 24 hours are critical, but his youth and health are in his favor." She left me with a clipboard of forms, medical history questions I couldn't focus on. I called my father Robert, my voice breaking as I told him. "I'm on my way," he said, his steadiness a small anchor. Then I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by other families, their faces etched with the same terror. I prayed, bargained, promised anything if Liam would just live. The surgery lasted 7 hours. 7 hours of pacing, of silent tears, of clutching Nathan's dog tags, the ones I'd kept since his death in Iraq. I thought of Nathan's courage, his belief in me, willing it to flow through Liam. When the neurosurgeon finally appeared, his face was somber. "We've stopped the bleeding in his brain," he said, "but there's significant swelling. We've placed him in a medically induced coma to give his brain time to heal. They'd move him to the pediatric ICU, where I could see him soon." Prepare yourself, he added. He won't look like the boy you know. Robert arrived as they settled Liam in the ICU, wrapping me in a hug that broke the dam of my tears. He's strong, Emily, he whispered. Like you. Seeing Liam nearly undid me. My vibrant boy, who'd been coding apps and biking trails, was a tangle of tubes and bandages, his head partially shaved, his face swollen beyond recognition. I approached his bed, afraid to touch him, afraid to disturb the machines keeping him alive. A nurse, Sarah, guided me to a chair. Talk to him, she said. He might hear you. So I did. I took his hand, careful of the IV, and spoke of his coding projects, the app he'd named Star Chaser, after Nathan's favorite sci-fi book. You're almost done with the boss level, buddy, I said, my voice trembling. We're going to finish it together, okay? I told him about the Space Needle trip we'd planned, about the robots he wanted to build. I kept talking, my throat raw, as if my words could pull him back from the edge. Robert stayed until evening, then left to update my mother, Margaret, who hadn't come. She's tied up with a fundraiser, he said, apologetic. I nodded, too tired to feel the hurt yet. In the quiet, I opened my journal, the one I'd started for Liam. Today was supposed to be normal, I wrote. You were so happy, biking with your friends, talking about your app. Now you're fighting, and I'm fighting with you. I won't let you go, Liam. Not ever. Writing was my lifeline, a way to hold on to him when everything else felt out of control. I thought of Nathan, how he'd dance with Liam in our Tacoma kitchen, how he'd believed in us. That belief was my strength now, a fire I'd carry for Liam. Sarah returned, checking Liam's vitals. You're doing everything you can, she said, her voice a balm. He knows you're here. I looked at Liam, his coding dreams locked behind his stillness. Margaret's absence, her focus on Olivia's birthday party in Portland, loomed in my mind. She hadn't called to ask about Liam, hadn't offered to come. Her world of appearances couldn't touch this raw, real place where my son fought for his life. I leaned close, whispering, You're my hero, Liam. Keep fighting. I'm right here, always. The monitors beeped, a fragile promise. That sunny day had turned dark, but I'd hold onto the light of Liam's spirit, refusing to let it fade. The ICU at Harborview Medical Center had become my universe. Its beeping monitors and sterile air a constant reminder of Liam's fragile hold on life. 4 days had passed since my 12-year-old son was hit by a car on Seattle's Burke-Gilman Trail, his body broken, his brain swollen. I sat by his bed, my hand cradling his, my eyes burning from exhaustion. The gray Seattle light filtered through the window, casting shadows that seemed to carry the weight of my past. My mother, Margaret Reynolds, had called again, her voice slicing through the hospital's quiet like a blade. She wanted me to leave Liam, to drive to Portland for my sister Olivia's birthday party. Her demand, her utter disregard for my son's life, was the final crack in a lifetime of conditional love. In that moment, I chose to cut the strings she'd tied around my heart. Liam's accident had stripped away the illusions I'd clung to, the hope that Margaret might one day see me, see Liam, for who we were. Her first call, 3 days ago, had stunned Mayher's crisp insistence that I help with Olivia's party, her threat to cut off financial support if I refused. I deleted her number then, a small act of defiance born of desperation. But she called again this morning, as I sat writing in my journal, pouring out my fear and love for Liam. The phone buzzed, her name on the screen reigniting the ache of a childhood spent chasing her approval. I answered, hoping, foolishly, that she'd finally understand. Emily, she began, her tone all business. I need you in Portland by noon tomorrow. Olivia's party is a family priority. You can't just sit in that hospital doing nothing. My breath caught, the room tilting. Liam's ventilator hissed, a steady counterpoint to her words. Mom, I said, my voice low to avoid disturbing him. Liam's in a coma. He has a traumatic brain injury, broken bones. He might not wake up. I'm not leaving him. Don't exaggerate, she snapped. The doctors are managing his care. Your presence won't change his condition. Olivia's 30th birthday is a milestone. You're being selfish, neglecting your family for no reason. Selfish. The word landed like a slap, echoing the years of her criticism-y sketches dismissed, my choices belittled. my life measured against Olivia's perfection. I glanced at Liam, his face swollen but still my boy, the one who'd coded his Star Chaser app with Nathan's stubborn spark. "My son is fighting for his life," I said, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. "This isn't a cold or a sprained ankle. He was hit by a car, Mom. I'm his mother. My place is here." "You're being dramatic," she countered, her impatience palpable. "Family obligations don't vanish because of a crisis. If you don't come, Emily, there will be consequences. The trust fund for Liam's education, the emergency savings we've provided those, can be withdrawn. Think carefully." The threat was a cold wind, chilling the part of me that had always feared her disapproval. For a moment, I was 16 again, standing in our Bellevue mansion, shrinking under her gaze. But then I looked at Liam, his small hand in mine, and something shifted. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about the boy who needed me to be his anchor, not Margaret's puppet. "No," I said, the word a quiet thunder. "I'm not leaving Liam. Not for Olivia, not for you, not for your money." "Emily Harper," she said, her voice ice. "You're making a grave mistake. Don't expect our support after this." "Then I won't," I replied, steady despite the tremor in my chest. "Goodbye." I ended the call, my heart pounding. The hospital hallway felt too small, the air too thin. I opened my contacts, found Margaret's number, and blocked it, the act both terrifying and liberating. For 35 years, I'd danced to her tune, accepting her help, her criticism, her conditional love. No more. Liam deserved better. I deserved better. I returned to Liam's side, my journal open, my pen moving. "Today, I said no," I wrote. Not just to her, but to the part of me that thought I needed her approval. "You're my reason, Liam. You're my strength." Writing was my rebellion. A way to reclaim my voice from the shadow of Margaret's expectations. I thought of Nathan, his unwavering belief in me, his love that asked for nothing but my heart. That was the love I'd give Liam, free of strings, fierce and true. Sarah, the nurse who'd become my lifeline, paused by the bed, checking Liam's monitors. "You okay, Emily?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "I just told my mom I'm not leaving," I said, my voice raw. "She wanted me to go to a party while Liam's like this." Sarah's expression softened, no judgment, only understanding. "You're where you need to be," she said. "He's lucky to have you." Her words were a balm, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Beyond the hospital, others had shown up in ways Margaret never would. Liam's teacher had dropped off a card signed by his class, colorful scribbles wishing him strength. Ethan's parents, shaken by the accident, had brought my laptop and clothes from our apartment. My coworkers at the library had started a meal train, leaving containers of soup I couldn't yet bring myself to eat. Their kindness, unasked for and unconditional, stood in stark contrast to Margaret's demands. I began a new page in my journal, a gratitude list to shift my focus from anger to light. Sarah's patience, I wrote. Ethan's mom's hug. The card from Liam's class. "These are the people who see us, Liam." The exercise grounded me, a small act of defiance against the darkness of Margaret's call. I thought of the reconciliation workshop I'd attended years ago, the facilitator's words about boundaries. I'd tried to coexist with Margaret, hoping for Liam's sake we could be a family. But her insistence on a party over Liam's life had clarified everything. Family wasn't obligation or blood. It was the people who showed up, who loved without conditions. I leaned close to Liam, whispering, "We're surrounded by love, buddy. Not the kind that demands, but the kind that stays." I told him about his coding app, how we'd finish Star Chaser together, about the summer we'd spend biking again, helmets on tight. My voice was steady, a promise to him and to myself. Margaret's threat-sure money, her trust fund loomed, but they felt smaller now, dwarfed by the life in Liam's hand, the hope in his steady pulse. Sarah returned, her smile warm. "Keep talking to him," she said. "It's helping more than you know." I nodded, my heart full of a new resolve. The ICU was a battleground, but I wasn't fighting alone. Liam's spirit, Nathan's memory, the kindness of strangers, they were my army. Margaret's strings had snapped, and in their place, I felt the freedom to choose Liam, to choose us. The monitors beeped, a quiet anthem of our fight. Whatever came next, I'd face it with a mother's heart, unbroken and fierce, ready to write a new story for my son and me. The ICU at Harborview Medical Center was a cocoon of hope and fear, its monitors a steady pulse in the quiet of Seattle's dawn. 4 days had passed since my son Liam, 12 years old and full of dreams, was struck by a car on the Burke-Gilman Trail. His small body lay still, tethered to life by tubes and machines, his face swollen beneath bandages. I hadn't left his side, my hand wrapped around his, my voice a constant thread weaving stories of his coding app, our Tacoma memories, and the future I refused to let slip away. Exhausted, I clung to the flicker of strength I'd found after cutting ties with my mother, Margaret Reynolds, whose demand that I attend my sister Olivia's birthday party in Portland had shattered any illusion of her love. Now, on this 4th morning, as I whispered to Liam, something shifted, a twitch, a flutter, a spark that lit the darkness. His eyes opened, and hope ignited. The days in the ICU had blurred into a haze of fear and resolve. I'd journaled relentlessly, pouring my heart onto pages for Liam, promising him we'd finish his Star Chaser app, visit the Space Needle, live a life free from Margaret's strings. I'd started a gratitude list, noting the kindness of nurses like Sarah, the card from Liam's classmates, the quiet support of my father, Robert. These small lights had kept me grounded, but nothing prepared me for the moment Liam began to return. It started with a twitch of his fingers against mine, so faint I thought I'd imagined it. I froze, my breath catching, my eyes locked on his hand. "Liam, sweetheart," I whispered, "can you hear me?" Another twitch, deliberate this time, accompanied by a slight furrow of his brow. My heart raced, a wild mix of hope and terror. I called for Sarah, who was at the monitors in an instant. "His heart rate's up," she said, her voice calm but alert. She leaned close, checking his pupils, her hands steady. "Liam, it's Sarah. Squeeze your mom's hand if you can." A pause, then a weak but unmistakable pressure against my fingers. Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and unstoppable. "That's it, buddy," I said, my voice breaking. "You're doing so good." Sarah paged Dr. Patel, the neurologist, who arrived minutes later, his face a mask of focus. He reviewed the EEG readouts, performed a quick exam, and turned to me with cautious optimism. "We're seeing increased brain activity," he said. "He's moving into lighter states of consciousness. This is a positive sign." He ordered a reduction in Liam's sedation, explaining that emerging from a coma was a gradual process, not a sudden awakening. "Keep talking to him," he added. "Your voice is helping." I nodded, overwhelmed, my hand never leaving Liam's. I leaned close, my words a lifeline. "You're coming back to me, Liam," I said. "We've got so much to do, your app, our summer plans. I'm right here, every step." I played his recovery playlist, a mix of his favorite songs, Imagine Dragons, classic rock Nathan had loved, hoping the music would reach him where my voice alone couldn't. The playlist was my addition to his healing, a way to surround him with the sounds of our life. As Believer played softly, Liam's eyelids fluttered, a quick movement that stopped my heart. "That's it," I whispered. "You're so strong." The hours that followed were a dance of anticipation and patience. Liam's signs grew stronger, more finger twitches, a faint turn of his head toward my voice. By evening, as Seattle's skyline glowed beyond the window, it happened. His eyes opened, not a flutter but a sustained gaze, unfocused at first, then settling on my face. "Liam," I said, tears streaming. "It's Mom. You're in the hospital, but you're safe." His expression was confused, the ventilator tube preventing speech, but his eyes tracked me, wide and searching. He squeezed my hand again, weak but purposeful, and I laughed through my sobs, a sound of pure relief. Sarah was there, checking vitals, her smile radiant. "Well, hello, young man," she said. "You've got a lot of people cheering for you." She called Dr. Patel back, and the room filled with quiet activity nurses, monitors, tests. Liam's eyes drifted closed, then opened again, each moment of wakefulness longer than the last. Dr. Patel examined him, noting good neurological responses. "He's initiating breaths on his own," he said. If this continues, we might try removing the ventilator tomorrow. The words were a lifeline, a promise that Liam was fighting his way back. I sat beside him, afraid to blink, afraid to miss a single sign. "You're my hero," I told him, stroking his hand. "You're doing what your dad would have done fighting with everything you've got." Nathan's memory was a quiet presence, his courage woven into Liam's resilience. I thought of the virtual support group I'd joined after Nathan's death, the widows who'd taught me that strength grows in the cracks of grief. That strength was here now, in Liam's small victories, in my refusal to let Margaret's demands pull me away. In my journal, I wrote, "Your eyes opened today, Liam. I saw you, really saw you, for the first time in days. You're my miracle, my reason. We're going to keep fighting, together," I added to my gratitude list. Liam's squeeze, his eyes, the music that reached him. The act of writing anchored me, a reminder that even in this sterile room, we were building something beautiful, a story of love, not loss. As night fell, Liam's wakefulness steadied. He mouthed words around the ventilator, too faint to read, but his eyes held questions. I reassured him, keeping my voice light. "Everyone's rooting for you," I said, sidestepping Margaret's absence, her focus on Olivia's party. That drama could wait. For now, Liam needed peace, not the weight of family conflict. I played another song, "Sweet Home Alabama," Nathan's old favorite, and Liam's fingers tapped faintly, a ghost of his usual energy. I laughed, tears falling. "You're still in there, aren't you?" Sarah paused by the door, her shift ending. "You're both fighters," she said. "Keep that playlist going. It's working." I nodded, my heart full. Liam's awakening was a spark, a flame I'd nurture with every story, every song, every moment I stayed by his side. Margaret's threat-sure money. Her approval faded in the face of this miracle. I'd chosen Liam over her control. And that choice had led to this moment. His eyes meeting mine. His spirit reaching for life. The ICU's hum was a symphony now, a song of hope. I leaned close, whispering, "We're just getting started, buddy. You and me? We're unstoppable." The monitors beeped, a steady vow, and in Liam's gaze, I saw the future we'd fight for, bright and unbroken. Olivia, elegant in a tailored coat, nodded, her eyes flicking to Liam with a mix of pity and discomfort. The pediatric ICU at Harborview Medical Center was a fragile sanctuary, its quiet hum a backdrop to Liam's slow return to life. 5 days after a car struck him on Seattle's Burke-Gilman Trail, my 12-year-old son had opened his eyes, his weak squeezes and fleeting gazes a miracle I clung to. I sat beside his bed, my hand in his, the ventilator's rhythm now joined by his own tentative breaths. Seattle's morning light spilled through the window, soft and hopeful, but the peace was shattered when my mother, Margaret Reynolds, and my sister, Olivia, walked into the room. Their presence, unannounced and unyielding, brought the weight of a lifetime of control crashing down. In that moment, with Liam's recovery hanging in the balance, I drew a line, boundaries forged in love, not fear, to protect my son and the life we were fighting for. Liam's awakening the previous night had been a spark, a flame I nurtured with whispers of his Star Chaser app, songs from his recovery playlist, and promises of our future. The doctors had removed the ventilator that morning, his raspy voice asking for water, a sound I'd never take for granted. "You're doing so good, buddy," I told him, helping him sip through a straw, my heart swelling with every small victory. But his recovery was delicate, his body and mind still healing from a traumatic brain injury, broken ribs, and a fractured pelvis. Dr. Patel had warned me to keep stress low, to shield Liam from anything that might disrupt his progress. I'd vowed to do just that, especially after cutting ties with Margaret, whose demand that I attend Olivia's birthday party in Portland had revealed her heart's true priorities. The door swung open without a knock, and Margaret strode in, her designer purse clutched tightly, Olivia trailing behind. Their faces were a study in forced concern, but I saw the undercurrent of reproach. "There you are, Emily," Margaret said, as if I'd been hiding. "We've been trying to reach you for hours." Her voice was sharp, a tone I'd known since childhood in Bellevue, where her standards ruled our lives. I set the water cup down, my hands steady despite the storm inside. "I turned my phone off last night," I said quietly, positioning myself between them and Liam. Liam woke up. He's still fragile. My voice was calm, but every word was a shield, protecting the boy who'd fought his way back to me. Margaret's gaze shifted to Liam, softening for a moment. "Hello, Liam," she said, her tone almost warm. "You gave us quite a scare." Then to me, in a lower voice, "We need to talk outside. Now." "I'm not leaving him," I said, firm, my eyes never leaving hers. Liam's raspy voice broke the tension. "It's okay, Mom," he whispered, his eyes heavy but trusting. "I'm okay." His words tore at me, but I nodded, stepping just outside the door, keeping Liam in sight through the window. I wouldn't let them pull me far from him. Not now. Not ever. Margaret wasted no time. "Your behavior yesterday was unacceptable," she began, her voice low but cutting. "Olivia's birthday was ruined because of your absence. Everyone was asking where you were. Do you know how embarrassing that was?" Olivia nodded, her expression a practiced blend of hurt and righteousness. "We understand you were worried, Emily," she said. "But it was just a few hours. You could have made an effort." The words hit like a wave, dragging me back to a childhood of comparisons, where Olivia's violin recitals trumped my sketches, where my efforts were never enough. But Liam's accident had changed me, stripped away the part that craved Margaret's approval. "My son was in a coma," I said, my voice steady, despite the anger rising. "He didn't wake up until last night. I wasn't going to leave him alone to set tables for a party." Margaret scoffed, undeterred. "He's awake now, isn't he? All that drama about staying by his side was clearly overblown. You could have spared an hour for your family. The photographer had to reschedule because you weren't there for the portrait." Olivia chimed in. "It was my 30th, Emily. A milestone. You know how important it was." The absurdity of their priorities photographs over Liam's life crystallized my resolve. "Liam nearly died," I said, my voice low but fierce. "He's still fighting. My presence here wasn't drama. It was love." He opened his eyes and saw me, his mother, right where I promised to be. Not in Portland, not posing for pictures, but here. Margaret drew herself up, her face the cold mask I'd feared as a child. "Don't take that tone with me, Emily Harper," she said. "After everything your father and I have done paying for Liam's classes, supporting you since Nathan died, this is how you repay us? With disrespect? What have you done, Mom?" I asked, the question cutting through years of silence. "You've criticized my parenting, bought Liam gifts to make me look small, compared us to Olivia's perfect life. You didn't even ask how he was until now. Tell me, what support have you given that didn't come with strings?" The words, long buried, felt like freedom, a release of the girl who'd shrunk under her gaze. Olivia gasped, unaccustomed to my defiance. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "You've made your choice," she said, her voice icy. "Don't expect our financial help anymore. The trust fund, the savings all of it, will be reconsidered." "I expected nothing less," I replied, calm despite the weight of her words. "But here's how this works. If you want to see Liam, it's one at a time, 5 minutes, no negativity. He's recovering, and I won't let you stress him. If you can't respect that, I'll call security." The certainty in my voice surprised even me. I was no longer the daughter seeking approval. I was Liam's mother, his protector, drawing a line Margaret couldn't cross. For a moment, I thought she might argue, but something in my eyes stopped her. She nodded stiffly and entered Liam's room, her demeanor shifting to the doting grandmother she played for others. I watched through the window, hawk-like, as she patted his hand, her voice soft but hollow. "We were so worried, sweetheart," she said. Liam, groggy, managed a small nod, confusion in his eyes. After exactly 5 minutes, I stepped in. "He needs rest now," I said firmly. Margaret's smile faltered, but she gathered her purse and left, promising Liam she'd return. Olivia's visit was brief, her discomfort palpable. She showed Liam photos of her sons, promised a visit when he was stronger, then left quickly, avoiding my gaze. When they were gone, I returned to Liam's side, exhausted but resolute. "You okay, buddy?" I asked, stroking his hair. "Were you fighting?" he whispered, his voice raw from the ventilator. We had a disagreement, I said, choosing honesty tempered for his fragility. Grandma wanted me at Aunt Olivia's party, but I needed to be here with you. His eyes, so like Nathan's, studied me. You stayed, he said, a faint smile breaking through. Every minute, I promised, my heart full. In my journal I wrote, "Today, I stood up for you, Liam. For us. I'm learning that boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to the life we deserve." I added to my gratitude list. Liam's voice, his trust, my own strength. The hospital's hum was a quiet anthem, a reminder that love, not obligation, defined family. Margaret's shadow loomed, but it couldn't touch us here, not anymore. The soft hum of Seattle's spring rain tapped against the window of our new, smaller apartment in Capitol Hill, a sound that felt like a gentle promise of renewal. 3 months had passed since Liam's accident on the Burke-Gilman Trail, since the ICU at Harborview Medical Center became our world, since his eyes opened and hope ignited. My 12-year-old son, once tethered to machines, was now sitting at our kitchen table, his laptop open, his fingers tapping code for his Star Chaser app. His recovery was a journey of small, hard-won steps, each one a testament to his resilience and our unbreakable bond. But the scars of those days lingered, not just on Liam's body but in the choices I'd made to set boundaries with my mother, Margaret Reynolds, to redefine family, to build a life on our terms. As I watched Liam, his brow furrowed in concentration, I saw not just healing but transformation, for both of us, step by step. Liam's progress was a mosaic of victories and challenges. After weeks in the hospital, he'd moved to physical therapy, relearning to walk with a walker, his fractured pelvis and ribs a constant reminder of the car that had nearly taken him. His traumatic brain injury left him with headaches and short-term memory lapses, moments when he'd forget a word or struggle with a math problem he'd once solved easily. Yet his spirit, that spark I'd seen in his coding dreams, burned bright. "I'm gonna beat this, Mom," he'd say after a grueling therapy session, his voice raspy but determined. I'd smile, hiding the ache of seeing my vibrant boy fight for what once came naturally, knowing his courage was a gift from his father Nathan, whose memory guided us still. Our life had changed in ways I hadn't anticipated. Margaret, true to her word, had cut us off financially, withdrawing the trust fund for Liam's education and the emergency savings she'd dangled as leverage. Her absence after our confrontation in the ICU, when I'd demanded boundaries to protect Liam, was both a wound and a relief. I'd spent 35 years seeking her approval, shrinking under her comparisons to Olivia, my sister whose perfect life in Denver was Margaret's pride. But Liam's accident had clarified what mattered. Love without strings, family that showed up. To make ends meet, I took on freelance graphic design work, turning my sketches into logos and event posters. We downsized to this apartment, trading space for simplicity. Our walls now hung with Liam's drawings from hospital art therapy sessions, colorful bursts of his healing heart. Community became our lifeline. My coworkers at the library organized a rotation to help with chores, dropping off laundry or groceries when I was at Liam's therapy appointments. Ethan's parents, still shaken by the accident, drove Liam to sessions when my schedule clashed, their quiet support a balm. Nathan's parents flew in from Boise, Idaho, staying for 2 weeks, filling our home with stories of Nathan's childhood and practical help cooking dinners, fixing a leaky faucet. Their love, unburdened by conditions, reminded me of the Tacoma dinners we'd shared when Nathan was alive, loud and warm, a stark contrast to Margaret's Bellevue formality. These were the people who saw us, who carried us when I couldn't carry myself. Liam's return to school, part-time at first, was a milestone. His homeroom teacher, Miss Larson, created a modified schedule to accommodate his fatigue and memory challenges, giving him extra time for tests and quiet spaces when headaches struck. His friends, awkward at first around his walker, soon fell back into their easy banter, pulling Liam into their world of video games and jokes. One afternoon, Liam came home beaming, a rare lightness in his eyes. "I started a coding club at school," he said, his voice stronger now. "I'm teaching the younger kids how to make apps. It's kinda cool." I hugged him, tears pricking, proud of the boy who'd turned his pain into purpose, mentoring others as he healed. In the hospital, I'd started art therapy for Liam, a suggestion from a nurse who saw his frustration at being unable to code. Drawing became his outlet, his sketches of robots and starry skies a window into his recovering mind. Back home, we continued the practice, spreading paper across our table, drawing together as music from his recovery playlist filled the room. "This is like your sketches, Mom," he said one evening, holding up a drawing of a spaceship. "You make stuff real." His words echoed Nathan's, who'd pinned my drawings to his dorm wall, seeing beauty where Margaret saw mess. In those moments, I felt whole, a mother and artist reclaiming her voice. My journal, begun in the ICU, was now a chronicle of our journey. "Liam walked 10 steps without the walker today," I wrote. He laughed at my terrible pun. "We're healing. Not just his body, but our life." I added to my gratitude list. Liam's coding club. Miss Larson's patience. The rain that makes everything feel new. Writing was my anchor, a way to process the loss of Margaret's support and the gain of something greater freedom to live authentically. I no longer woke with the weight of her expectations, no longer measured myself against Olivia's Denver mansion or her gifted twins. Liam and I were enough, our small life rich with love and purpose. The financial strain was real. Without Margaret's trust fund, Liam's college future relied on scholarships and my savings, a daunting prospect. But we had time, and Liam's determination, his talk of coding his way to a scholarship, inspired me. I took on more design clients, finding joy in creating, each project a step toward independence. Our downsized life taught us simplicity, valuing movie nights and library books over material excess. Nathan's parents promised to help with college when the time came, their support a quiet vow, unlike Margaret's manipulative gifts. Liam's recovery wasn't linear. Some days, headaches confined him to bed, or he'd forget a coding command, frustration etching his face. But he pushed forward, his coding club a beacon, his drawings a release. "I get it from you, Mom," he said after a tough therapy session. "Dad said you were the toughest person he knew." I smiled, tears falling, thinking of Nathan's courage, now alive in Liam. We were healing together, not just from the accident, but from the years of Margaret's control, each step a reclamation of our worth. As I watched Liam code, his fingers dancing across the keyboard, I saw the boy who'd fought to live, the son who'd taught me to fight for myself. Our community neighbors, teachers, Nathan's family had woven a net of love, catching us when we fell. Margaret's absence was a shadow, but it no longer loomed large. In my journal I wrote, "We're building something new, Liam. A life where love doesn't demand, where we shine as we are. Thank you for showing me how." The rain outside softened, a whisper of hope. Step by step we were healing, not just surviving but thriving, in a world we'd chosen, together. The soft glow of Seattle's sunset painted our Capitol Hill balcony in shades of orange and pink, a quiet celebration of Liam's 13th birthday. A year had passed since the accident on the Burke-Gilman Trail, since the ICU at Harborview Medical Center became our battleground, since my son's fight for life reshaped everything I thought I knew about family. Liam sat beside me, his laughter mingling with the breeze, his walker replaced by a slight limp that spoke of his resilience. Our small apartment was filled with the warmth of chosen family friends, co-workers, Nathan's parents whose love had carried us through the darkest days. As I watched Liam blow out his candles, I felt a profound peace, a freedom born of choosing love over obligation, of redefining family on our terms, not those of my mother, Margaret Reynolds, whose shadow no longer touched us. Liam's recovery had been a journey of grit and grace. From the moment his eyes opened in the ICU, through months of physical therapy, headaches, and memory challenges, he'd fought with a courage that echoed his father, Nathan, lost to us in Iraq 8 years ago. Now, at 13, Liam was back at school full-time, his coding club, a source of pride, his Star Chaser app nearly complete. His drawings from hospital art therapy sessions adorned our walls, vibrant reminders of his healing spirit. "I'm going to get a scholarship, Mom," he'd say, his eyes bright with plans for college, undaunted by the loss of Margaret's trust fund. His determination fueled me, a reminder that we were building a future on our own terms. The year had transformed me as much as Liam. Cutting ties with Margaret, whose demand that I attend Olivia's birthday party in Portland while Liam lay in a coma had severed the last threads of her control, was both painful and liberating. Her decision to withdraw financial support the trust fund. The emergency savings was a blow, but it freed me from her strings. I'd spent 35 years chasing her approval, shrinking under comparisons to Olivia, whose Denver life was Margaret's gold standard. But Liam's accident, his fight, had shown me what family truly meant. Love that shows up, unwavering, without conditions. I no longer woke with the weight of her expectations, no longer measured our life against her metrics. Our community had become our family. My library co-workers, who'd organized meal trains and chores during Liam's hospital stay, brought a homemade cake for his birthday, their laughter filling our home. Ethan's parents, who'd driven Liam to therapy, arrived with a thoughtful gift-a-coding book tailored to his interests, a nod to his club. Nathan's parents called from Boise, Idaho, promising a summer celebration during our planned visit, their voices a bridge to the Tacoma days when Nathan's love held us together. My father, Robert, came briefly, his presence a quiet gesture of support, though he remained tethered to Margaret's world. He brought a gift-a-robot kit without mentioning who'd chosen it, and I accepted it for Liam's sake, knowing some ties were too complex to unravel fully. Margaret and Olivia were notably absent, their estrangement a choice I'd made to protect Liam and myself. Olivia had tried to reconcile, sending Liam small gifts, asking about his progress, but her overtures felt tentative, shadowed by Margaret's influence. Margaret's visits were rare, performative, her expensive presence a reminder of the disparity she'd always highlighted. I returned her letters unopened, their guilt-laced words no match for the life we were building. The financial loss stung college loomed, and my freelance graphic design work, while growing, couldn't replace the trust fund, but it was a price I'd pay for freedom. Liam's talk of scholarships, my own determination to save, gave us a path forward, one we'd walk together. We traveled to Arlington, Virginia last month, a pilgrimage to Nathan's memorial at the National Cemetery. Standing before his name etched in stone, Liam's hand in mine, I felt closure and strength. "Dad would be proud of you," Liam said, his voice steady, "for staying with me, for standing up." I knelt beside him, tears falling. "He'd be prouder of you," I said. "Your coding, your club, your heart." The trip was a turning point, a way to honor Nathan's love while embracing our future. Back home, I'd started a blog, sharing my hospital journal entries, my gratitude lists, our story of boundaries and healing. Readers responded, their comments a chorus of shared struggles, proof that our journey resonated beyond our small world. On the balcony, as the sky darkened, Liam leaned against me, his warmth a reminder of how far we'd come. "Mom," he said, his voice thoughtful, "are we ever going to be close with Grandma again?" The question, long expected, deserved honesty. I took a breath, choosing words for a 13-year-old who'd seen too much. "I don't know, buddy," I said. "Sometimes love hurts more than it helps. Grandma and I see family differently. She wants control, but I want us to be free to be ourselves." He nodded, rubbing the scar on his arm from surgery. "She made you sad," he said, his insight piercing. "Even before the accident." "She did," I admitted. "I kept trying because I thought that's what family does. But I've learned family is the people who lift you up. Like Ethan's parents, your teachers, Grandpa and Grandma in Boise. They're here because they choose us, not because they have to. Like Dad chose you," he said, his eyes on the stars. "He'd say you're doing awesome." I laughed, tears spilling. "He'd say we're both awesome," I said. "You're my hero, Liam, for fighting, for teaching me what matters." We sat in silence, the city's hum, a gentle backdrop. I thought of Nathan's belief in me, the virtual support group that taught me resilience, the reconciliation workshop that showed me boundaries were bridges to freedom. Liam's accident had nearly broken us, but it had also freed us, revealing the strength we carried, the love that sustained us. In my journal, I wrote, "Today, we celebrated you, Liam, and the family we've chosen. We've lost money, ties, expectations, but we've gained so much more love, freedom, us. Thank you for being my light." I added to my gratitude list. Liam's laughter, our balcony talks, the stars that remind me of Nathan. The blog had become my way to share this truth, to inspire others to choose love over obligation, to find strength in letting go. As Liam dozed against me, I looked out at Seattle's skyline, the Space Needle a quiet sentinel. We'd faced the unimaginable, a car crash, a coma, a family's betrayal, and emerged stronger, not because of Margaret's wealth, but because of our heart. The college fund was gone, the inheritance a memory, but we had each other, a community, a future we'd shape. Choosing love had meant choosing freedom, a life where Liam could code his dreams, where I could sketch and design, where we could be enough, just as we were. The stars above whispered Nathan's pride, and in their light I saw our path bright, boundless, ours to write, together. A year ago, Emily Harper's world shattered on a sunny Seattle morning when her 12-year-old son Liam was struck by a car on the Burke-Gilman Trail. The accident thrust her into the sterile, beeping heart of Harborview Medical Center's ICU, where she sat for days, holding Liam's hand, whispering promises of coding apps and Space Needle trips, willing him to live. That moment, with its raw terror and fierce love, was the crucible that forged Emily's transformation. From a woman bound by her mother, Margaret Reynolds' conditional love, Emily emerged as a mother, artist, and survivor who redefined family, freedom, and self-worth. Her journey, marked by loss, resilience, and choice, is a testament to the power of love that stays unshackled by obligation and offers lessons that resonate far beyond the Seattle skyline. Emily's story began long before the accident, in the polished halls of her Bellevue childhood, where Margaret's standards cast a shadow over her every step. Compared endlessly to her sister Olivia, the violin prodigy whose Denver life was Margaret's pride, Emily grew up believing she was never enough. Her sketches, her track medals, her quiet heart were dismissed, her worth measured against an impossible ideal. Yet, in the margins of that life, Emily found solace sketching Puget Sound's ferries, volunteering at Capitol Hill's food bank, discovering a voice Margaret couldn't silence. Those early acts of rebellion planted seeds of strength that would bloom years later, when the stakes were life and death. At 19, Emily met Nathan, an engineering student at the University of Washington, whose love was a sunrise after a long night. He saw her art, her humor, her heart, and never asked her to be anyone else. Their marriage, despite Margaret's disapproval, was a haven of laughter and dreams in Tacoma, where Liam's birth completed their world. But Nathan's death in Iraq, when Liam was 5, left Emily a widow at 29, grappling with grief and the challenge of raising a son alone. She moved to a modest Capitol Hill apartment, took a library assistant job, and leaned on military benefits, all while Margaret's control tightened. Gifts for Liam, financial help, family visits each came with strings, pulling Emily back to a childhood of inadequacy. Liam's accident was the breaking point. As he lay in a coma, Margaret's demand that Emily leave his bedside for Olivia's birthday party in Portland revealed a truth Emily could no longer ignore. Her mother's love was a transaction, not a gift. Emily's refusal, her decision to block Margaret's number, was a seismic shift, severing decades of manipulation. When Margaret and Olivia stormed the ICU, criticizing Emily's absence from the party, she drew boundaries with a mother's fierce resolve, limiting their visits to protect Liam's fragile recovery. Margaret's retaliation, cutting off Liam's trust fund and financial support, was a blow, but it freed Emily from the leash she'd worn too long. Liam's awakening, his eyes opening on that 4th night, was a miracle that fueled Emily's fight. His recovery was arduous physical therapy for broken bones, art therapy for his healing mind, coding club to reclaim his passion for Star Chaser. Emily matched his resilience, taking on freelance graphic design to replace Margaret's money, downsizing their life, and embracing a community that became their chosen family. Library co-workers brought meals, Ethan's parents drove Liam to therapy, Nathan's parents from Boise offered love without strings. These were the people who showed up, who saw Emily and Liam not as lesser but as whole. A year later, on Liam's 13th birthday, Emily sat on their balcony, watching Seattle's sunset, feeling the weight of their journey lift. Liam's laughter, his coding dreams, his quiet wisdom, "Dad would be proud of you," were her North Star. Their trip to Nathan's memorial in Arlington, Virginia, brought closure, a moment to honor the man whose love still guided them. Emily's blog, born from her hospital journal, shared their story, inspiring others to set boundaries and choose love over obligation. Margaret's absence, Olivia's tentative gestures, Robert's quiet support, they were part of the tapestry. but no longer its center. Emily and Liam had built a life rich with authenticity, not wealth, grounded in love that asked nothing but to be returned. The lesson of Emily's story is profound. True family is not defined by blood or obligation, but by love that uplifts without conditions. Margaret's control, her insistence on appearances over Liam's life, showed that some ties bind too tightly, demanding conformity at the cost of self. Emily's courage to say no, to choose Liam and herself, teaches us that boundaries are not walls but bridges to freedom. Her journey reveals that resilience grows in the cracks of lost Nathan's death. Liam's accident and that community, chosen with care, can heal where blood fails. Most importantly, Emily learned to see her own worth, not through Margaret's eyes but through Liam's, Nathan's, and her own. For us, living in the complexity of modern life, Emily's story offers practical wisdom. First, recognize toxic dynamics, whether in family, work, or friendships. If someone's love comes with strings demands for compliance, comparisons that diminish set boundaries, even if it means loss, say no, as Emily did, and trust that the space you create will fill with authentic connections. Second, build your chosen family. Seek out those who show up, like Emily's coworkers or Nathan's parents, who offer support without scorekeeping. A neighbor's kindness, a colleague's empathy, a stranger's smile. These are the threads of a stronger net. Third, embrace your own worth. Emily's sketches, dismissed by Margaret, became her livelihood and voice. Your passions, your quirks, your heart, they are enough. Pursue them, whether through art, coding, or quiet acts of care, and let them define you. Finally, hold fast to hope. Emily's vigil in the ICU, her journaled promises, her playlist for Liam, they were acts of faith in a future she couldn't see. In your darkest moments, grief, illness, betrayal, find small rituals to anchor you. Write, create, connect, and believe in the light beyond the storm. Emily's story reminds us that choosing love, even when it's hard, is choosing freedom. It's a choice to live authentically, to love fiercely, to build a life that reflects your heart, not someone else's rules. As Emily and Liam look to the stars, their path clear and bright, let their journey inspire you to choose your own freedom, to love without strings, and to shine, unapologetically as you are.